people wake up desperately early to get Bet the Edge at 6 a.m., 6:05.
There's no better way to start your day with some granola, some Wheat Bix, and some
Deebo Samuel highlights as well. As we jump into Weekend Warriors, Deebo Samuel absolutely tops our list here. 34 fantasy points. He is wide receiver 1 right now, Matthew. I mean, just a Deebo game where he gets you a touchdown on the ground, classic, but also 149 yards through the air receiving.
He's been on the podcast twice, and since returning in Week 10,
it's helped him play, apparently.
I'm just saying, since he returned from injury in Week 10, he's the third best wide receiver in fantasy football on a points per game basis. Deebo's been nothing short of terrific. Third straight game with multiple touches of 20 or more yards, so he's getting these big chunk plays as well. 6 touchdowns over the last 3 games. And one of the things that sort of helps the Brock Purdy case, if you look at the touchdown pass that he caught, it's an absolute dime.
It's not yak.
Right.
It is It is a layered bomb.
You're right. Brock Purdy just throws an absolutely perfect ball. And so just like I know you guys everyone will say, oh, Brock Purdy's a system quarterback and everything like that, but like system quarterbacks don't make those kind of throws. Like, I get it. He was open. Deebo's really good, but like he hit him in stride. Like, I mean, just a perfect play, Anyway.
PFF have this stat called big time throw rate, which basically is like, the big time throws the extra difficulty throws. And Brock Purdy's 5th in the NFL in that. It is not easy completion. So, and I think that helps Deebo because he's able to find him on these deep balls as well as the short intermediate stuff.
It just, again, it's just death by 1,000 cuts, whether it's McCaffrey or Ayuk or Samuel or Kittle. They all had great games. They always seem to kill the Seahawks, but look at their upcoming schedule. Okay, they're at Arizona this week. They got Baltimore in 2 weeks, which honestly I think is a Super Bowl preview.
Yeah,
right
that's
now,
a big one.
That'll be a great one. But then they're at Washington and home to the Rams. So, I mean, it's a pretty nice schedule. That Baltimore game's going to be tough, but the Ravens defense, obviously, you just saw last week, they're not impenetrable. And, the same with the Rams. So it should be a good, if you have Niners, it should be good throughout the fantasy playoffs.
Our next one here, Breece Hall, he comes in as RB2 from the weekend. But, Jay, the reality was, for the Jets, he's wide receiver 2. All Breece's production was through the air, 8 catches, 86 yards. And a touchdown. Zach Wilson, when in doubt, checked it down to Breece Hall.
Yeah, and we were talking about this while we were getting our makeup done before the show.
Right,
so the Jets offense, it's Garrett Wilson, who, to your point, is always open. And if he's not open, just throw it to Breece Hall and see what he can do.
Right.
And it felt like for the first time in a long time, they finally embraced that as their identity, and Breece Hall really benefited.
21% target share in his 4th straight game for Breece Hall. I mean, again, you've got a running back getting a 20% target share with his ability, his run after the catch ability. Pretty good. He's back on the, high-end RB2, low-end RB1 radar.
Yeah, he is their number 2 receiver. And Zach Wilson was a beneficiary of that. 19.4 fantasy points, QB 12, throws for 2 touchdowns in this game. Matthew, and a career high, 117.9 passer rating.
Yeah, by the way, 19 fantasy points, over 300 yards. He actually got 3 runs. And by the way, Zach Wilson also drinks for free today here at the Happy Hour.
Good for you, Zach.
Good for you. That kid has taken so much crap, so much unbelievable crap. And so for him to go out, and that's a big win at home against a good Texans team, I get it. Nico Collins left early, but honestly, that's it. And we talked about this a little bit last week and on Fantasy Football Pregame, where I was just said, I sort of feel like Zach Wilson's going to play well here because, guys, he's going to be like, look, I've already been benched for Tim Boyle. Yeah. How much worse can it get? Right. F it. Because with Zach Wilson, it's never been about the physical skills. It's all been mental for him. Yep. And I felt like taking all the pressure off of him because it's like, what's the worst that can happen for me? Like, I ain't going to be here next year. Like, what, they're going to bench me for Tim Boyle again? Been there, done that, bought the T-shirt. Like, whatever. I'm going to let it fly. And that's exactly what he did. And he played within himself. And then you see some of the quotes after the game, Connor, that felt like that was his mentality.
Right. He was confident. He was loose. Played like he had nothing to lose. Nathaniel Hackett had his best game of the year as well. They lit up the Texans in the second half, which is more importantly from a fantasy perspective because you're not starting Zach Wilson. Is Garrett Wilson, top 5 wide receiver. Breece Hall, top 3 running back. Yep. That's what you need.
Yep. No, Zach Wilson was fantastic. Daughters, lock up your mothers.
I'll just say this, though. Again, in a league in which you may have lost Justin Herbert, right? And every week there's more and more quarterback change. At Miami next week, home to Washington. At Cleveland, you don't love that. At New England. But again, the next 2 weeks are favorable fantasy-wise. I bet you he's throwing a ton at Miami, and obviously there's no better secondary to throw against than my Commanders. So Zach Wilson in deep 2 quarterback leagues, like you could, if you're desperate,
Sure.
I'm just saying,
Better than Nick Mullins, probably.
Right? I mean, right, exactly. I mean, anyway. So we'll talk about that all tomorrow. But Zach Wilson on the deep league streaming radar. He got picked up in our league already. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think it was Pete.
Yeah, backup producer Pete.
Pete.
Who's.
Yeah, you know.
Opportunistic.
For the Bengals, Joe Mixon and Chase Brown make the weekend warriors, Jay. We know what Mixon can do and the volume he gets, but it's like the Bengals remembered they drafted Chase Brown. Very odd how long this took.
Yeah, kind of a Jalen Warren vibe to Chase Brown. Just an added explosiveness. It just feels like he runs for 20 yards every time he gets it against. And they eviscerated the Colts, the two. The Colts don't have a great run defense, but they took advantage.
Let's hear for Jake Browning. Second good game for him again. Keeping it in close, getting a bunch of completions, getting yards after the catch, which you saw with Chase Brown. It's opening up the run game for Mixon. Tough day for Chase, not really worried about it. Nice to see T. Higgins getting involved, but the Bengals are suddenly viable. We'll talk more about Chase Brown tomorrow, but again, if you have Joe Mixon, it's clear that Chase Brown is very important for your roster construction.
How about Evan Engram? Monster day for Evan Engram. He comes in as tight end 1, as you see at the top here, over 32 fantasy points, and largely, Matthew, because he caught 2 touchdowns, but 11 catches for 95 yards. Ingram's on a good stretch here right now.
Since week 3, he's had a 19% target share. We were wondering, what does this Jaguars passing offense look like without Christian Kirk moving forward? Evan Ingram's already been a big part of it, continues to, I think, going to be an even bigger part as they move down the stretch. Now, they were down in this game quite a bit. Kudos to Trevor Lawrence for getting out there. A lot of people were wondering, is this season ending? And nope. Once again, Trevor Lawrence doesn't miss a game. But, yeah, Ingram's a tight end 1.
And another guy like that right now, Jay, David Njoku comes in as tight end 2. Starts off the game with a basically blown coverage, 30-plus yard touchdown. But put together a consistent performance, 6 catches, 91 yards, and 2 total touchdowns.
Yep, seems like he's established a rapport with Joe Flacco. This is the second game in a row where Flacco has just looked competent. They're running a real NFL offense, which they kind of weren't with PJ Walker. So Njoku, Cooper, and Elijah Moore. But Njoku was a monster yesterday.
All right, let's get into the Sunday scaries, and we start with the tough one that is C.J. Stroud getting away from the injury, which was in the second half, the concussion. Stroud couldn't get anything going, guys. He comes into this game without Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz.
Nico
Collins very early with the calf injury, which I think is a re-aggravation of an early season injury. 91 passing yards, Matthew, no touchdown. 2 passes really could have been very easily intercepted. The Jets dropped them. It's a brutal day for Stroud.
Tough day at the office. Listen, Jets have made a lot of quarterbacks look bad as well, but this is now under 17 fantasy points in 3 of the past 4 games. His numbers on the season without Tank Dell are not great. We'll see if Nico Collins is going to lose some time. Even if C.J. Stroud clears the concussion protocol, they're on the road to Tennessee, then home to Cleveland, home to Tennessee, at Indianapolis. It's not a great schedule for the Texans the rest of the way, and just feels like if all you have is C.J. Stroud because you're like, hey, I'm playing with house money, this is my guy, feels like you may need another quarterback here for the next couple of weeks because you don't love him on the road at Tennessee or home to Cleveland, especially if he's going to be without obviously Tank Dell and maybe also Nico Collins.
Jay, as Matthew said before, tough day for Jamar Chase, less than 6 fantasy points. He's wide receiver 48, but the Bengals were just able to run at will against the Colts.
They were able to run at will. They were leading effectively in the entire game. Jake Browning only had to throw 24 passes. So just throw this one out for Jamar Chase. He showed what he could do with Browning against the Jags, and he will be fine going forward.
You know what you guys should be lucky about? Neither of you were on national television last week saying that you liked the over on 40 points of Vikings-Raiders because
37 points
I just needed a plus 37, right? Exactly. Because you know who did that and has 2 thumbs? This guy. Yeah, this was ugly. This was just like a brutal. Raiders alone had as many punt yards as there were combined yards of offense. Madison leaves with an injury. Justin Jefferson leaves early with an injury. Josh Jacobs leaves with an injury. It's just bad day at the office for all of them. We'll talk more about those 2 teams coming up, but just fantasy wasteland. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.